My process in the studio changes quite a lot, but at the moment I'm tending to write ideas and then move on quite quickly. So I'll make sort of a 16 bar with, you know, various tracks. And then when an idea comes along that I'm really into, whether it's a vocal I've got or it's something that's just been sitting on my hard drive for a while and something sparks, I've got sort of a group of projects that I can almost harvest, and I go back over them and I go, well, you know, this sound was really interesting and this one really worked, and I can bring that into this new project that I'm working on. So you sort of end up sampling yourself, which is a great way of sounding original, keeping your own sound. Well, I've been in various studio spaces, from my mum's kitchen back when I was a kid to side bedrooms and garages with spiders and stuff. So when we moved here, it was a kind of opportunity to build something from scratch. I managed to build the acoustic panels myself as well, which was quite a good fun job. Before this studio, let's just say my idea of DIY was changing a light bulb. The hardware for me, I think, is the same for quite a lot of people. It's the experience of having a physical object that you can reach out and touch and play with. Does it sound better? I don't necessarily think it does. I think the software can sound just as good, but it is about that workflow and that experience. I haven't got an extremely large amount of outboard equipment, but for me, my workflow is all about the harmony between hardware and software. It's getting the best of both worlds. They've both got a lot to offer, and I think if you can harness their power and use them together, it works a lot better in the studio. You don't need all the outboard stuff. It's not a necessity. You know, it's a luxury, it's expensive. And certainly for me, when I first started making music, I was on a laptop and Logic Pro. You don't need anything else. I think the more you do it and the more you get into it, the more time you spend in the studio, the more you realize that you want to reach out and try other creative methods. At the moment, my setup's quite streamlined. I've got one mono synth, one poly synth, a couple of drum machines and a sampler and my mixer, so I kind of include those with all my software synths. My Moog Sub 37 is brilliant. It's quite simple to use. It's only got 2 oscillators, well, a third if you include the noise, which is quite dark, but it can sound good if you can treat it separately. I tend to find myself reaching for the Moog when I want to get nice, rich, low-end tones. It can do high-end stuff as well, but I kind of know which frequencies it hits well and when I need them in my tracks. Innovation Peak is my polysynth, and it's an interesting one because it's sort of a hybrid synth. It's got digital oscillators, but then it's got analog filters, so you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. I can use it for anything from making sort of almost like modular drum sounds and rhythms to lush pads and soundscapes and textures and drones to great bass sounds and lead synths. So it's a really good go-to synth. Again, like the Sub 37, it's got a really big front panel with lots of sort of one knob per function faders and buttons, and that really helps to create sounds quickly on the fly. You know, you can just do things. If an idea comes to your head, you just reach out, turn a few knobs and do a few things, and you've got this great sound. My Nord Drama 3P is probably the most unique thing I have. It generates some fantastic sound. It's really, really good for the top end. I often use it when I need some shakers or something that really sizzles in the top end. You can play it on the pads with the drumsticks, although my drumming is not very good. I can get some kind of rhythms going, but it has MIDI as well, so you can sequence it. My main sequencer at the moment is my Electron Digitact, so it's my drum sampler, but it's got 8 MIDI sequencing channels on it, so I can sequence all my external gear with it. Sequencing the Nord is the best thing because you can really bring things out of it that you can't do on the front panel. It hasn't got many knobs and it's got not many sort of things that you can tweak at the same time. A lot of it's menu diving, so you can't really reach those parameters without a MIDI controller, and then you can start accessing the CCs and changing things, and that's when it really comes to life. As my audio interface, I've now got the Tascam Model 24. A lot of my work is still done in Logic as far as mixing is concerned, so I'll be doing sort of surgical EQs and getting sort of most of the reductive things done in there, the corrective EQing and soundscaping and compression and dynamics. And then once I'm happy MIDI and I want to do my mix, I'll run all the tracks out of Logic through the board and just do some additive EQ and some tone shaping on there before recording it onto the SD card. Omnisphere from Spectrasonics it's my favourite soft synth by far. I mean, it's got so much scope. The fact that it works as a sampler as well, you can do everything with it and blending layers. It's got a fantastic sequencer that now in the new version spits out MIDI, so I can create a sequence, turn that into MIDI, put that on a different track and send it to one of my synths, and suddenly the sequence I've created in the software is now triggering my hardware. The newest piece of software I'm working with at the moment is from Slate Ash, which is sort of a sample mangler, but it does granular synthesis and sequences, and you can upload your own samples from vocals to brass to anything, any synth, and you can just create these amazing textures that just come out of nowhere. I love using vocals on it as well, because especially if you're doing a remix, you can take a part of a verse and turn it into an arpeggio or turn it into a pad instantly. It's really creative, and I've used it on definitely, I think, the last 5 or 6 tracks that I've done, because it always sounds different no matter what you do with it, because you can feed it different audio. For me, it always starts with drums and groove. Even the kick, I spend a lot of time just starting and getting my kick right, whether I'm using a sample or whether I'm designing a kick. The tone of the kick is really important, especially in dance music, because it's going to drive the track. And I find a lot of the decisions I make on sounds afterwards are derived from the tones that are in that kick. I think it's very common that you can go into a track, if you take your kick drum out of a finished track and you replace it with a different kick drum, how different it can sound and how weird it can sound. I've worked really hard over the years to get where I am, and there's still plenty more to do, but I do feel fortunate to be working in such a great environment with amazing equipment. But more than anything, I just feel happy and grateful to be doing something that I love, and to have found something that inspires me and excites me as much now as it did 15 years ago.